A lone corvette drifted through a silent region of space, its hull scarred by long-ago battles. The vessel was named Paladin's Hope. It bore no official insignia, only the faint remains of a stylized planet once painted near the prow. Time and countless encounters had worn away most details, leaving only the suggestion of a circle and lines that might have been continents or seas. Within that corvette's cramped bridge, a small crew maintained a constant vigil, scanning for hazards, listening for signals. Their mission was neither glorious nor widely praised, yet each member of the crew carried a fierce dedication born of what humanity had endured over centuries. They came from a dozen scattered colonies. Some were the last children of star systems overrun by an alien empire called the Renar Collective. Others hailed from backwater outposts, once enslaved by a second power known as the Graal Dominion. All of them had stories of forced labor, stolen resources, and entire populations forced to bend the knee to powers that considered them lesser. But the humans aboard Paladin's Hope had not accepted subjugation, not after the centuries of learning, adapting, and forging alliances where they could. Their ship's name was more than a label. It was a statement that even in the darkest times, a spark of perseverance glowed. On the bridge sat Captain Rena Delgado, her posture relaxed but her gaze ever alert. She had once been a navigator on a merchant vessel that traversed a dangerous trade route between two contested sectors. While the merchant ship had been seized by the Graal Dominion, she had escaped captivity by orchestrating a quiet revolt in a labor camp. That experience had taught her that humans did not require large fleets to stand up to oppression. They needed cunning, unity, and the conviction that no empire, however old or vast, was truly invincible. At her side was First Officer Elias Moran, who had lost both parents when the Renar bombarded his homeworld. He had grown up in a refugee flotilla, fueling an unwavering resolve to see humankind live freely among the stars. Their corvette, though small, was outfitted with systems salvaged from defunct space stations and repurposed alien technology. The corridors were a patchwork of steel from half a dozen different yards, so each hallway told a silent story of desperate construction. Some compartments bore the grimy marks of quick welding done in hidden docks. But it flew, and it carried a powerful sensor suite that allowed the crew to detect threats long before stumbling onto them. Rumor had it that if the Paladin's Hope were cornered, it had a few teeth in the form of a railgun and a missile launcher. But the ship's best weapon was usually stealth. In a lounge just off the bridge, engineer Talia King studied a set of readouts that scrolled across a battered console. She kept an eye on engine tolerances and warp field stability, mindful that any miscalculation out here could be deadly. Her father had once toiled in the orbital factories of a powerful alien empire, building starships that would later threaten other innocents. He had told her bedtime tales of Earth's ancient triumphs before its scattered diaspora. Talia carried those memories like a quiet ember, stoking them whenever cynicism or despair threatened to overwhelm her. Her creed was simple. No matter how meager your resources, you leverage them into something greater. She had turned the Paladin's Hope's ramshackle propulsion into an efficient beast that ran on scraps, always ready to flee when heavier warships prowled the region. Most in the wider galaxy dismissed humans as disorganized remnants. The Renar Collective believed that humanity, once strong centuries ago, had scattered so far it posed no real threat. The Graal Dominion considered them worth enslaving, not exterminating, for labor. Other powers took no notice. But the crew of Paladin's Hope, along with many other small pockets of humanity, had grown adept at working in the shadows, forging contacts with sympathetic aliens who resented the major empires. Everyone had lost something to these unfeeling hegemonies. Quietly, a network of alliances had formed, linking backwater stations, hidden asteroid settlements, and free traders. Each node carried intelligence, supplies, or crucial technology to keep humankind alive. On a routine sweep through a region rumored to house a secret Renar outpost, Captain Delgado picked up a faint distress call. The signal was so weak that it nearly blended into cosmic background noise, but Talia's modifications allowed them to isolate it. The crew recognized an old Terran emergency code. That alone made it worth investigating, for it could mean a Terran settlement was in trouble, or perhaps a drifting vessel that needed rescue. Even if it turned out to be a trap, ignoring it was not an option. Delgado set course, pushing the corvette's engines to cross the distance with caution. They had no illusions that they could take on a powerful empire's fleet, but they were not about to let a cry for help go unanswered. As they neared the coordinates, they detected debris, twisted metal that had once been part of a freighter. Sensor sweeps revealed environmental suits drifting in vacuum, some with life signs precariously low. Paladin's Hope extended its grapplers, securing the suits and bringing them into the cargo bay. Medical Officer Jan Cross hurried to treat the survivors. Among them was a woman named Soraya Mills, who wore a patch from an independent Terran enclave in a sector far from here. She was delirious, wounds from shrapnel and oxygen deprivation. Once stabilized, she whispered hoarsely of an attack. She explained that her freighter had been carrying grain from a remote Terran colony to another outpost. In transit, they were ambushed by a Renar raiding craft. Soraya believed the Renar had discovered her colony's location and intended to seize it for resources, or worse, subjugate its people. She did not know if the rest of the freighter's crew survived. All she knew was that the Renar had left her vessel a smoking ruin, then departed, presumably to continue their mission. Her panic was clear. If the Renar found that colony, they could easily overrun it with the advanced warships at their disposal. Hearing this, Captain Delgado and her crew felt that old anger stir. Another Terran colony in danger, another unstoppable threat. Standard logic would say a single corvette could do little, but that logic had never stopped Delgado before. She asked Soraya for coordinates. In halting sentences, the wounded survivor provided them. The place was called Thresh's Vale, a hidden planet orbiting a dim star in the corner of a seldom-traveled region. If the Renar had discovered it, it was only a matter of time before they landed and demanded the colony's surrender. The Paladin's hope set out immediately. Even so, Delgado knew that time was short. The Renar raid craft had a head start and possibly more resources to call upon, but no one on her crew hesitated. They had saved a handful of survivors from a destroyed freighter, and if they could, they would save an entire colony. Or at least warn them. Perhaps the colony itself had meager defenses. Maybe they could rally them. Bilius Moran studied star charts and recalled that Thresh's Vale had never broadcast its location out of fear of being annexed. Its population might be just a few thousand, an agrarian settlement lacking real planetary shields. When they arrived in the star system, the Corvette's sensors detected no immediate sign of Renar ships in orbit. That was both a relief and a worry. The Renar might have already landed, or they could be lurking in stealth. Paladin's Hope approached the planet cautiously. A few dusty satellites orbited at low altitude, transmitting old Terran signals. Delgado hailed them, identifying herself as Captain Delgado with an urgent message for planetary leadership. At first, the satellites gave no response. Then, after repeated attempts, a static-laced voice asked them to approach designated coordinates on the planet's surface. Thresh's Vale was a warm world with fertile plains and scattered forests. The settlement Delgado landed near was modest, wooden structures, a few steel-framed buildings, farmland stretching to the horizon. Locals gathered as the Corvette touched down, faces showing curiosity and concern. Delgado, Talia, and Elias disembarked, arms raised in a gesture of peace. They were met by a man named Garrett, who claimed to be one of the colony's coordinators. He wore simple clothes, had calloused hands from farmland labor, and carried the posture of someone burdened by daily struggles, yet unwilling to bend. In a small meeting hall, Delgado explained that a Renar raiding craft was likely en route to seize the planet. She advised immediate evacuation, or at least a plan to repel the invaders. Garrett and other elders shook their heads. They had no illusions about winning a direct fight. Their colony was small, lacking advanced weaponry. They possessed a few pulse rifles from old stockpiles, some farmland vehicles that could be rigged with basic armor, but that was hardly enough to stop a warship of a major empire. Yet some of the younger colonists showed a spark in their eyes. They refused to bow to a regime that would likely enslave them, exploit their fields, or forcibly integrate them into the Renar's expansion. Delgado offered a possibility. If they sabotaged the enemy ship after it landed, maybe they could hold them off. The Paladin's Hope was not suited for a starship duel, but the Renar might be vulnerable on the ground, especially if they underestimated these primitive farmers. The elders wavered. They did not want to see their home turned into a war zone. But Garrett recognized the truth. If they did nothing, the Renar would claim everything. The colony could be stripped of independence. So with a heavy heart, he and a few others agreed to let Delgado's crew organize a defense. They had at most a day or two, guessing by the timing Soraya had relayed. The settlement's farmland became an impromptu training ground. Young men and women who had grown up plowing fields learned to hold rifles. Talia King used her engineering know-how to rig farmland equipment with plating. She even jerry-rigged a few old anti-vehicle mines from crates the colony had hidden away, relics from long-lost Terran caches. Night fell, and in the hush of starlight, Delgado patrolled the settlement's perimeter. She overheard whispers of fear from families who had never imagined battling aliens with advanced technology. Yet there were also pockets of grim determination. Humans might lack star fleets, but they had never lost their ability to adapt. Elias organized volunteers to form watch teams. They had a few battered drones that soared overhead, scanning the sky for inbound craft. The Paladin's Hope hovered at the edge of the settlement, prepared to provide some covering fire if needed. At dawn, the drones detected an inbound signature from low orbit, a medium-sized Renar vessel decelerating. A hush fell across the settlement. People took positions behind barricades, vehicles revved in the background, and mothers clasped children's hands. Even those who wanted no part in fighting realized that if the Renar demanded submission, there would be no negotiation. Delgado and Talia crouched near the best vantage point to watch the craft land. A swirling dust cloud signaled the arrival as the Renar ship extended landing struts onto a grassy clearing. The ramp opened, and a squad of tall, armored figures stepped out. Their helmets carried a distinctive crest, and they moved with lethal confidence. One carried a device that presumably scanned for large concentrations of life forms, while another barked commands in a language that translators struggled to parse. The Renar likely expected minimal resistance. They saw fields, wooden structures, a few scattered watchers. Then one alien stepped forward, broadcasting an ultimatum in a halting version of the local language. The colony must surrender, provide food and labor quotas, and comply with Renar law. Garrett emerged from behind a low wall, mustering all his courage. He spoke for the colony, politely refusing. He claimed that Thresh's Vale was an independent settlement and would not serve as thralls. The Renar paused, evidently stunned by the direct refusal from what looked like peasants. Then their leader raised a weapon, making it clear that compliance was not optional. Shots rang out as a second Renar unleashed a warning blast into the air. That was the signal Delgado had planned for. Hidden on a rooftop, Elias Moran triggered a small rocket that whooshed across the clearing. It struck near the Renar formation, sending dirt and debris flying. The aliens scrambled, momentarily disorganized. From behind fences, colonists opened fire with ancient pulse rifles. The Renar, though wearing advanced armor, found themselves flanked by more resistance than they anticipated. For a moment, confusion reigned. The Renar squad took cover behind their landing gear, firing bursts of bright energy that sizzled across farmland. Some colonists fell under those blasts, but many managed to keep firing. A tractor, fitted with improvised steel plates, rumbled forward, drawing the Renar's attention. Under that distraction, Talia King crawled behind a ridge and lobbed a repurposed anti-vehicle mine. It detonated near one Renar trooper, shattering armor plating. The alien squad leader roared in an alien tongue, presumably ordering the ship's crew to retaliate. The Renar craft powered up a turret. With a whine, it swept across the settlement, incinerating a shed. Delgado, seeing this from her vantage, radioed to the Paladin's Hope. The Corvette soared overhead, unleashing a precise railgun slug that tore into the turret mount, disabling it. The Renar ship shook from the impact. The Corvette's pilot, a quiet man named Devrin, circled wide, readying another shot. The Renar realized they had underestimated the locals. Additional troopers rushed out of the ship, though fewer than expected for a full invasion, suggesting that this was likely a small raiding craft rather than a heavily manned warship. The firefight intensified. Plasma blasts scorched farmland, set hay bales ablaze, while Terran bullets pinged off advanced armor. Some colonists flanked the Renar with farm vehicles, forcing the aliens to divide their attention. Despite this bold defense, the Renar remained formidable. Their energy beams punched through improvised barricades, and each trooper seemed physically stronger than a human soldier. Casualties mounted among the defenders. Delgado herself took a glancing hit that singed her side, yet she refused to yield. Between gritted teeth, she signaled Talia to prime the settlement's final gambit, a stolen Graal Dominion rocket launcher they had found in a hidden crate. Talia handed it to a young colonist named Marin, who with trembling arms aimed at the Renar ramp. She fired. The rocket streaked across the clearing and impacted near the base of the ramp, sending a concussive wave that tore open the hull. Sparks rained inside the alien vessel. Shaken by the direct hit, the Renar squads retreated behind the partial cover of their craft. Meanwhile, Paladin's Hope maneuvered overhead, firing a rail slug that cratered the ground near the starboard thrusters. The Renar engine sputtered, metal twisted. The pilot inside that raider craft likely realized they could not take off easily now. A standoff ensued as troopers signaled for reinforcements via comm arrays. If a larger Renar warship arrived, the settlement would be doomed. They had to force the raiders to flee or surrender before backup could come. Sensing a shift, Delgado rallied the colonists for one more push. She urged them to concentrate fire on the downed ship's open ramp. A hail of bullets and repurposed grenades battered the interior. One Renar trooper tried to charge forward, only to be brought down by a volley from an irrigation droid Talia had fitted with a small plasma emitter. It was an absurd sight, a battered droid rolling out blasts, but it illustrated humans' knack for turning any tool into a weapon if needed. Finally, with thrusters damaged and the landing zone in chaos, the Renar survivors realized they could not hold the position. Their leaders signaled a retreat back into the half-wrecked craft. The engines sputtered, the vessel rose a few meters, then crashed back down, leaving a trail of smoke. Moments later, an emergency override must have kicked in, because a secondary engine roared. The ship lifted in an unsteady ascent, ignoring the battered thrusters. A few remaining Renar troopers sprinted aboard at the last second. The entire hull wobbled as it gained altitude, taking sporadic fire from the defenders below. Then it angled out toward the atmosphere, leaking energy. Paladin's hope followed for a brief moment, but Delgado decided not to pursue. If the Renar had called reinforcements, the corvette needed to stay near the settlement to coordinate further defense or a potential evacuation. When the dust settled, the farmland was scarred. Multiple buildings smoldered and wounded colonists lay across the battered earth. The defense had not been without cost, yet the Renar raider craft, severely damaged, had fled. It was an outcome many found hard to believe. People stared at one another, exhaustion and relief mingling in their eyes. Some wept at the sight of fallen neighbors. Others tried to salvage what they could from the burning wreckage. As the sun set on the horizon, the survivors of Thresh's Vale gathered near the cratered clearing. Delgado spoke to them with quiet respect, commending their bravery. She suggested they keep watch for further Renar incursions, but that for now, the immediate threat had passed. Garrett, bruised and covered in dust, thanked Delgado and her crew. He admitted that without them, the colony would have been enslaved or destroyed. The presence of Paladin's hope and a few old Terran weapons had made all the difference. In the days that followed, the corvette's crew helped the colonists rebuild, distributing spare parts for repairs and offering medical supplies. Word spread that humans from a humble corvette had faced down a technologically superior raiding craft. Nearby outposts discreetly heard about it too, fueling a sense that perhaps the major empires were not omnipotent. In a small farmland settlement, battered but unbowed, men and women discovered that resilience and ingenuity could indeed match advanced aggression, given the right mix of courage and cunning. Soraya Mills, now recovered from her injuries, expressed her gratitude. She planned to remain in Thresh's Vale, helping them fortify in case the Renar returned. She told Delgado that some of the colonists might be ready to link with the broader human network, forging alliances beyond their corner of space. It was an encouraging sign that Paladin's hope would move on, continuing its mission to unify scattered Terran enclaves. But the seeds of cooperation had been planted here. Before departing, Talia King gifted the settlement a homemade sensor beacon that would warn them if another warship entered orbit. The colonists could then reach out to allied corvettes or neighboring stations. It was a minor device, but to them it felt like a lifeline to a broader community they had never known they had. Captain Delgado, with a final handshake to Garrett and the others, boarded the corvette. The ramp closed, engines fired, and once again the small vessel ascended into the starry void. Inside the cockpit, Delgado gazed at the receding farmland. She wondered how many more such battles lay ahead, how many settlements stood on the brink of destruction. Elias Moran murmured that they could not fight every threat, yet their stand had proven something important. People in the region would hear of it, realize that a determined group could resist. Talia King nodded, reminding them that humankind thrived when forced to improvise. Each small victory, each saved colony built momentum. They might never form a conventional navy to rival the Renar or Graal Dominion, but they did not need to. They needed only to keep forging ties, sabotaging the oppressor's confidence, and demonstrating that humans were not a people to be trampled quietly. The Paladin's hope engaged its warp drive, vanishing from Thresh's Vale's orbit. In the swirling lines of faster-than-light travel, the crew felt neither triumph nor complacency. They felt a sense of renewed purpose. Today, it was one small colony. Tomorrow, who knew? Perhaps a chain reaction would spread across the entire sector, fueling an undercurrent of defiance. Every planet saved or freed gave the galaxy one more reason to question the inevitability of tyranny. Days later, they emerged in a remote star system rumored to have an abandoned listening post. There they found fragments of old Terran satellites, defunct but possibly salvageable for intelligence. Talia King set to work scanning for data logs that might hold clues to other enclaves or hidden warp lanes. Elias plotted a route to a rumored hidden station where they could restock, and Delgado quietly recorded a message to all Terran outposts within range, recounting the defense of Thresh's Vale, encouraging them to stand firm. She sent it off in a beam that would likely take weeks to reach some corners, but she held faith it would reach them in time. Back on the bridge, Delgado's crew sipped recycled water, quietly savoring the knowledge that a fearless ragtag band of colonists had faced down a technologically superior foe and emerged battered, but standing. Had the Renar truly left the region for good? Possibly not. But they had learned to be wary of small corvettes and farmland that hid cunning defenders. They had learned that humans were not as broken as they believed. In a region of space where empires spanned hundreds of systems and overshadowed the cosmos with their fleets, a single corvette did not seem like it could matter. Yet the Paladin's hope, by saving a single settlement, had sparked something intangible, an ember of confidence among the exiled. Each success would embolden other outposts. Each rescue would remind scattered families that they were not alone, and so humankind survived, not merely scraping by, but proving in countless small ways that spirit could outmatch might. No empire could extinguish that entirely. As the Corvette's warp drive spooled for its next jump, Talia shared a small smile with Elias, who nodded. Captain Delgado checked final readings. They engaged the field, and stars blurred outside the viewport. Into unknown frontiers they traveled once more, hearts steadfast. They carried no grand flags or royal decrees, only a steadfast determination woven through every bolt of their patched hull. The cynics would say they were doomed to wander, always outgunned, but they knew better. They had faced the Renar. They had helped a colony stand tall. They would do it again and again, across 1,000 worlds if necessary. So, the Paladin's hope vanished into the cosmic darkness, a lone vessel bearing the legacy of a species that refused to vanish. They did not conquer or colonize. They carried protection, solidarity, and an unrelenting will to stand for their own, and for any who desired freedom. The deeper they ventured, the more the galaxy might awaken to a truth that no empire relished hearing. A determined people, even scattered and overshadowed, could not be erased if they believed in their collective right to exist unshackled. And so the small corvette flew on, forging new stories in starlit passages, each mission weaving another thread in the tapestry of perseverance that bound all humans, near and far, in unity against oppression.